So for the last 10 years, I've been running a nonprofit to advance the research, the evidence associated with that research, the education, and the policy associated with broad-based employee ownership, and specifically helping entrepreneurial companies in their life journey to look at what works for them. And this is incredibly timely. And that's because capital ownership is increasingly the dominant source of wealth creation. Okay, so what does that mean? If you want to address income inequality, you can't get there through wages. You have to have some capital ownership. This is one example and only one example. But if you have capital ownership that is more inclusive of employees, we have one way of addressing the widening income inequality that we have. So as part of our educational programs, I wanted to find a way to help others understand, I guess obviously my passion for this, but if you haven't lived this, then how can you understand what this feels like? And so that's why we produced and distributed this film. It's aired on PBS. And it's now at hundreds of universities, and it's used by hundreds of companies in their employee training, not only here in the United States, but in 18 countries. It highlights 3 companies, which I'll mention briefly in a little bit. So let me step back and where is employee ownership? What is it? So it's broad-based employee ownership that we're really looking at. That can come in a lot of different ways, shares and stock options. I'll mention things like synthetic stock and phantom stock. You might have heard of cooperatives. But if you look broadly across just the United States, there's 9,000 companies that have broad-based employee ownership, and they're hidden in plain sight. Some have minority ownership, Southwest Airlines, Google, Procter & Gamble, all have broad-based employee ownership. It's minority hold. So employees don't own the majority of the company. But there are 3,000 companies in the United States that are majority held, and those are privately held. The oldest company, actually, it was founded before there was even a country, the United States. It's the King Arthur Flour Company, is employee-owned company, and they're a benefits corporation. Innovative companies like W.L. Gore, the maker of Gore-Tex, they're an employee-owned company. Publix is the largest employee-owned company that we have in the United States, and they have 136,000 employee owners. And one of the companies that I show in the film is New Belgium Brewery, the maker of Fat Tire, that was co-founded by Kim Jordan. And she looked early on how to build in employee ownership, phased it in, and over 7 years, it's now 100% employee-owned. And how many of you are here from Michigan and know Zingerman's? So Zingerman's, you probably know, is a very unique culture, and they have a hybrid combination of employee ownership and definitely a culture of shared responsibility and ownership. Incredible company. If you haven't been to Zingerman's, you must go. Fantastic community of food businesses. All right, so what's the connection again with the impact on having shared ownership with employees? There's been about 100 research projects that have looked into this. And what we know is that there's the combination of having a financial stake, so that capital ownership as well as participation has positive impacts. For the firms, higher sales, growth, profitability, and productivity rates. There are lower turnover rates in these companies. What does it mean for the individual? For the individual, employee owners have 4 times less likely to be laid off during a recession. We have studies on the 2 last recessions and have done that comparison. So 4 times less likely to be laid off. But there's also the positive side, which that's a positive, but the greater wealth aspect. Employee owners, based on research, have wages that are 5 to 12 times higher than employees in comparable peer non-employee-owned companies. That adds up. They also have 2.5 times more value in their retirement programs. That makes a difference. What we are lacking information on how this affects women. There is a study that has started to look specifically at the impacts of employee ownership in lower income, and we do know that women are more disproportionately represented in lower income and minority wages. So I think we're going to have some really interesting research come up in the next year.